Hi everyone, for today's book review we're going to be checking out this awesome book, Steam Yachts at War by Steve Dunn. The subtitle gives a more concise account of what this book covers. The naval deployment of British and American armed yachts between 1898 and 1918. This is a wonderful book that explores a little-known aspect of naval warfare and looks at the use of these beautiful vessels in naval service in both the Spanish-American War as well as in the First World War. The book is divided up not so much chronologically but more thematically. We get a wonderful chapter about the evolution and development of steam yachts, and there are some wonderful historical asides from how the steam yachts developed, their engine development, their size, the different types of steam yachts. We learn about one of the designers, Thomas Watson, who was so prolific in his lifetime. He designed 432 vessels, which, when calculated, brings an output of one new build for every 3.5 weeks. With motivation like that, it's quite understandable that he died at the relatively young age of 52. We also get a brief look at some of the owners of these yachts and some of their personalities. And one in particular was quite a horrible human being, McEvers Bayard Brown, who basically had one yacht that he lived on board, and he had the turn-of-the-century equivalent of a super soaker, and at night would crawl into the cabins of his workers and squirt water into their ears. Or in one instance, he would even chop off the moustache of his secretaries while they were asleep. But even more cruel was he would have his chef heat up panfuls of coins, and then as beggars would row out and try to catch the coins, they obviously didn't know that they were boiling hot. And when he saw that some of them were quite smart and were wearing gloves to catch the coins, he would throw hot water at them. And then when he was feeling particularly generous, he would wrap 100-pound notes in lumps of coal and throw it at the beggars. So not a nice gentleman at all. Beyond building a picture of the society at the time that gave us these beautiful vessels, he said, for Americans in particular at this point in time, it was the era of conspicuous consumption, whereby the steam yacht was the latest and greatest luxury to have, to show off your wealth and your insecurities. You know, prior to that, it had been the railroad carriage. Now, it was the steam yacht. We then go through and look at the deployment of yachts in the Spanish-American War. We then have a look at yachts employed in the First World War, and we have different chapters looking at what it was like to fit out a yacht, what it was like to serve on board these vessels, some successes, some failures, and credit to the author as well to round everything out. We also have accounts of both officers and crew members who recollected their times on these vessels. On paper, it made sense to use these wonderful vessels as hospital ships, patrol vessels, sub-chasers, escorts. But the reality is that these yachts weren't built for naval warfare. They just weren't heavy-duty vessels. They weren't as maneuverable, and they certainly weren't as seaworthy. And if they had to fire their guns, well, their hulls couldn't exactly absorb the recoil that came from firing those guns. Having said that, there are instances, and they are recorded in the book, whereby some of these yachts successfully depth-charged submarines and sank them. And of course, there are many tragic examples where through incompetence or just through actions of war that several yachts were lost, and again, due to their size and construction, they sank very quickly with the loss of many lives. Most tragically, the Iolare, which went down with over 200 men that were being brought back home at the end of the First World War. The book then is wrapped up with a summary of what happened afterwards, Some of these yachts ended up surviving long enough to be then put back into use in the Second World War, but for most of them they were sold on to other uses. There's 10 pages at the very end of the book that has a variety of plans. You can see one of these up here, showing you some of the different types of yachts and even how they were fitted out as gunboats. Most of the photography in this book is in crisp, beautiful black and white, and again, you should be seeing some of those as I'm talking now. There are a handful of color photos at the very beginning. The bulk of this book, though, the photography is in black and white, and my goodness, is it luxurious, just like the yachts themselves. They have found, the author, credit to the author for finding these beautiful, crisp, glass plate negative type photos where everything is just in beautiful focus and so crisp, and the reproduction is absolutely first class. So gorgeous photos to look at. Tons of fascinating information about both the yachts themselves, their owners, how they were used, what it was like to be on board. This is an all-encompassing book that covers this particular type of vessel in naval warfare, and it is without doubt a 5 captain's hats. It is wonderfully well written, lavishly illustrated, and a fascinating insight into an aspect of naval warfare that really just hasn't been covered. There are books about yachts, there are books about yacht design, there are books about navies, but never specifically about steam yachts in war and what it was like to fight and be in action with these vessels. So if you love naval warfare, if you love your yachts, if you love your steam yachts, if you love anything to do with naval developments around the turn of the 20th century, hunt this book down. Lots of fascinating information and fantastic photos. So go, hunt it down, read, and you will not regret it. It is fantastic.